Hello, ladies and gentlemen and programmers. We're going to do Arduino Robotics Project 3B, the ultrasonic distance sensor. Okay, here's what we're going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And let's take a look at the finished project here. Hopefully you can kind of see it. The lighting looks kind of funky. But anyway, so we're making this little guy. He's got his little robot eyes. The eyes are actually using sound. And if you can see the little light here. So what happens is if my hand is far, the light is green. If my hand gets closer, it turns yellow. Ooh, can I get it to turn yellow? It'll turn yellow. And if my hand is even closer, can you even see my hand? Oh, my hand is getting closer. As my hand is getting closer, it turns red. Okay, and so basically this guy, the ultrasonic distance sensor, is reading the distance, and then we're telling this guy what to do using an if, then, else, if, then, else, if, else statement. Okay. All right. So how does it? So it does there's three things it can do. If it's far, if it's medium, or if it's close, it does three different things. All right. So look on page 60 and answer these questions. Ask me for help if you need it. Look on page 62 to answer these questions. And if we go to page 62, we have our pseudocode. And basically what we're going to do is if the distance is less than 10 inches, turn on the red light. If the distance is between 10 and 20, make it turn yellow. And if the distance value is neither of those other two, which means it has to be farther than that, then we turn on green. So that's pseudocode. So we solve the problem in English before we try to solve it using the Arduino language. Okay. All right, good. You can get those. All right. And then what is a float? How does an else if work? We have to have three different conditions: far, medium, and close. So we need to use an else if. And what is a user-defined function or method? All right, let's hook it up. Just follow page 61 to hook it up. You should be able to do that on your own. And then after you hit pause until you get that done. And then now we're going to code it. All right, we're going to do the import area. There is no import area on this one. We're going to do the instance variable declaration area and the setup. All right, here's some code of note. We're going to say constant int trig pin. We're basically setting up, hey, what pins do what. So 11 is the trig pin and 12 is the echo pin. We're going to talk about what is a trig pin and what's an echo pin in a second. But what I want to talk about here is with the word constant in front of there. We have a variable that holds integers, but in this case, it doesn't vary. It's a variable that doesn't vary. It always stays the same, so it's constant. A constant is a variable that does not change. Write that down in your notes. And then we're going to use a float. You should hopefully know at this point you learned what a float is. A float is nice because you can hold a decimal. Some decimals variables are really big and take up a bunch of space in the RAM. The float is nice that it allows you to store a decimal in the box or in the RAM, but it doesn't take up a ton of space. And we're using a float because the ultrasonic distance sensor will give a distance as a decimal, so we are going to store it in a float. If we tried to store what the results from the ultrasonic distance sensor in an integer, it would crash because you would try to be shoving a decimal in an integer, and it wouldn't like that. So write that down. Okay, well, speaking of write it down, let's go ahead and start coding this here. Let's open up this, and let's open up this. Okay, so we're going to go right here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go, okay, and we're going to say constant int trig pin equals 11. That's the code we just looked at. We're going to say constant int echo pin equals 12, and then we're going to add this last star, float distance equals 0. So basically we have all of our integers or our instance variables set up. So we set up our pins, and so our trig pin and our echo pin, and then we set up the red, green, blue. So our LED light has red, green, and blue, and we can use a combination of red, green, and blue to make a wide variety of colors, and we'll see that in a second. All right, so now let's go back to our spiel and see what we have next. All right, so we're gonna jump to the void setup, and we're gonna write this code: pin mode trig pin output, echo pin is the input. Let's take a look at the book on page 61 and see what that says. So if we're going to go to page, let's see if we can find it, 61. So basically, we have our ultrasonic distance sensor, and this one is power. So we have power in and we have ground. So basically, we just gave it power. We plugged it in. Okay, but we need to obviously do more than that, because the way it works is on the output. Okay, so on the trig, okay, on the yellow one, I don't know why I'm freezing up here. Sorry about that. So on the one, you're sending a power to it. And when you send the power to it, it sends out a super high sound. It's like that. It sends out a super high sound, right? And then the other one, so the output sends out the sound, and then the input, the sound bounces off of something, and then it reads it when it comes back. And so it's like, oh, okay. So the farther something is, the longer it takes for the echo to get back. And so you have the power out, power back. So you have powered, and you have the input and output. So that's where you have those two things. That's what we're setting up right now. Okay, so we got one is output and one is input. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Oh, I guess we got to code that. All right, let's jump back over here to our code here. All right, so we're going to come down here to our constructor. Okay, and so we're going to say void setup. Okay, so we're creating our method. So we say void setup, and then we're going to say parentheses, parentheses. Now, I already did the opening curly brace and the closing curly brace. So we're creating our method. This is a special method. It runs one time. It constructs everything, gets everything set up. And so make sure you get that done. All right, and then now we're going to type in the code that we just talked about. We're going to do the output and the input. So we're going to come right here, and we're going to type in that. And then we're going to come over here, and we're going to type in that. So where the stars are, we're going to put that in. Okay, and now we should all be set. Now, if you look up here, down here, we're setting up the RGB. So we have our red, green, and blue. We're setting those up as all output so that we can send the signals out to each of those color pins and get the color the way we want. All right, let's go back to our spiel here. All right, now we're going to do the loop. Okay, so distance equals get distance. All right, so we have this method here, get distance. All right, so what we're doing is we're calling on a user-defined method. So let's jump to our code, and let's type that in first, and then we'll jump to the code. All right, so we're going to come down here to our game loop. Okay, and so we're going to say void. I'm going to click right here and type in void loop, parentheses, parentheses. Again, I have the opening and the closing curly braces all set up, so don't add those in. So we're starting our game loop. This is like the ACT method in Greenfoot. This part runs over and over again. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in this method. We're going to say distance equals get distance, parentheses, parentheses, semicolon. All right. So here's a method called get distance, and this does not exist in any current library. This is one that we have to create. So we're going to come down later, and maybe we'll just do it right now. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to make that method definition. Okay. So we have a method call, and then we need the method definition to go with it. So we're going to say float. Not doing it. Let's try it again. Float, and we're going to say get parentheses, parentheses, and again I have the opening and closing curly braces already. So right now we're saying, hey, I'm teaching you how to get the distance, right? And now up here we're asking it, hey, get distance, and we're going to stash it in this instance variable called distance, which we defined right there, float distance, right? So we're stashing it in that variable, okay? Okay, so that's the first thing is, so we are calling on a user-defined method or function, and down here we're defining our user-defined function. Okay, all right, so here we go. Let's keep going with our spiel. All right, so we have the if-else statement. All right, so right here I have a handout for you. Grab that handout because we see the sissy blue color. Okay, so the if-else statement executes the first segment of code whose condition is true. So if this is true, it does this. If this is true, it does this. If neither of these are true, then it will do this. Okay, only one segment is executed. It won't do two, and it will never, so it'll never do two, and it'll never do none. It's always going to do one. One of the statement blocks is always executed, never two or more. Okay, and by the way, you could do an if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else. You can do an unlimited number of else ifs. In this case, we just need three because we have red, yellow, and I have no idea what the other one is. Green. Okay. What image will be set when the following code is executed? So this is just random code we're not writing, but if score is equal to 10, score plus equals 2, so 10, score now equals 10 plus 2 is 12. Is it going to do this? Is it going to do this? Or is it going to do this? Answer that question in your notes. If you can't figure that out, ask me. All right, so let's do our else if. Let's go ahead and code that. Let's go ahead and code that. So I'm going to hit, I didn't need to do that. All right, so we're going to come down here. So we're working in our loop here. It just occurred to me that I've been going on for a long time. I normally break these things up into multiple sections. I apologize. Anyway, this will be a long one. Okay, so we're going to come over here, and we're going to do that. What we just talked about, the if, else, if, else. So right here, we're going to start our if. So we're going to say if, and now we have to figure out what the condition is. Okay, so we're going to say distance. So if the distance is less than or equal to 10 inches, okay, then we're going to make it red. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I won't take too much time to do this, but to make it red, we're going to type in this. Okay, so the red pin is 255, which is 100% red, no green, no blue. Okay, so that one LED has red, green, and blue in it. It's actually 3 LEDs in one, and we're going to make it all red. Okay, so if it's close, then we're going to make it red. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the else if. So if that's not true, then we're going to try something else. So we're going to say else if, and then the condition here, we have to do parentheses, parentheses, go inside the parentheses, and else if, this is a funny way to do it, but it makes sense if you look at it. So if 10 is less than distance, and we're using a operator and there, and the distance is less than 20. So the distance is between 10 and 20. So this is a middle range. So distance is greater than 10, but distance is less than 20 is what we're asking there. And then again, I already have the curly brace. So we have the opening and closing curly brace. So what are we going to do? So let's just copy this. So we'll copy this, paste this here, and then we're going to change this around. So on this one, we want the red pin and the green pin on so that we make yellow. So we'll make that 255. So we're turning on red and green to make yellow. Okay. And then finally, none of these are true. It's not close, it's not medium. So the only thing that's left is it could be long, but we don't need to ask it. We just said, hey, if it wasn't the first one or the second one, else, then we'll do the same thing. We'll paste that code here, Control V, and then we're going to make it no red, and all green. By the way, I can't remember if that's supposed to be 255. I think it might be supposed to be 50. Anyway, we'll try it. If that doesn't work good, we'll give it a shot. All right. So then, yeah. So we'll pause between testing each thing. Okay. By the way, I didn't really say this, but when this gets distance, guess what that does? It gets the distance between your hand and the ultrasonic distance sensor. All right. That's it for now. I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to finish this up in the next video.